Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Bhagavad Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Together, Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Ashtaprayeshu Abhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavata, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer a respectful obeisance to the personality of God, unto Narayana, the supermost human being, unto Mother Earth, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, for regular attendance in classes on all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise we transcendent, established as an irrevocable fact. All right. Good morning, everyone. We will continue where we left off from last time. It was Monday. So does anybody remember what happened on Monday? Okay. Oh, yeah, Nate.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead was born in an incarnation as Bal
Kapila Dev.
And his father, once he was born, was like, "You got this. I'm gonna take sannyas."
Yeah. So Kapila Dev is going to be speaking now. Okay. So we'll start verse 35 and we'll read until the end of the chapter. We'll come back to this verse. Okay, start. Personality of Godhead Kapila said, "Whatever I speak, whether directly or in the scriptures, is authoritative in all respects for the people of the world. O Muni, because I told you before that I would become your son, I have descended to fulfill this truth.
My appearance in this world is especially to explain the philosophy of Sankhya, which is highly esteemed for self-realization by those desiring freedom from the entanglement of unnecessary material desires.
This path of self-realization, which is difficult to understand, has now been lost in the course of time. Please know that I have assumed this body of Kapila to introduce and explain this philosophy to human society again."
So I wanted to pause here real quick. Here is saying, Kapila Dev is saying that this knowledge was lost in due course of time. So he's appearing again. We see that somewhere else, very common in the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna appears whenever this knowledge has been lost. And this is what he's doing here. Kapila Dev is saying that the knowledge was lost in due course of time. So he's now coming to reestablish that. Let's continue reading. Next person.
Now, being sanctioned by me, go as you desire, surrendering all your activities to me, conquering insurmountable death, worship me for eternal life.
that will always see me, supreme effulgent soul, dwelling within the hearts of all living entities. Thus I'll achieve the state of eternal life, free from all lamentation and fear.
I shall also describe this sublime knowledge, which is the door to spiritual life, to my mother, so that she can also attain perfection in self-realization, ending all reactions to fruitive activities. Thus, she also will be freed from all material fear.
I'd like to pause here real quick also. And here Kapila Dev is saying that he's going to deliver the spiritual knowledge his wife's spiritual life is taken care of. So Kapila Dev is basically consoling her that, yeah, I will also teach the spiritual science to her. So please, leave and I'll take care of it. Let's continue.
Shri Maitreya said, thus when Kardama Muni, the progenitor of human society, was spoken to in fullness by his son Kapila, he circumambulated him, and with a good pacified mind, he at once left for the forest.
The sage Kardama accepted silence as a vow in order to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and take shelter of him exclusively. Without association, he traveled over the surface of the globe as a sannyasi, devoid of any relationship with fire or shelter.
He fixed his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Par Brahma, who is beyond cause and effect, who manifests the three modes of material nature, who is beyond those three modes, and is perceived only through unfailing devotional service.
Thus, he gradually became unaffected by the false ego of material identity and became free from material affection, undisturbed, equal to everyone, and without duality. He could also. His mind was turned inward, was like an ocean unagitated by waves.
He thus became liberated from conditional life, from conditioned life, and became self-situated in transcendental devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, the omniscient supersoul within everyone.
He began to see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated in everyone's heart, that everyone is existing on him, because he is the super soul of everyone.
Freed from all hatred and desire, Kardama Muni became equal to everyone because of discharging uncontaminated devotional service, ultimately attained the path back to Godhead.
So last verse. It ends with Kardama Muni going back to God. It says only by devotional service. So he attained pure devotional service and he went back to Godhead. Let's go back to verse for today, which is verse 35. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Maya proktam hi lokasya pramanam satyalokaki atha jani maya dubhyam yadavocha vritham mune Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya proktam hi lokasya pramanam satyalokaki atha jani maya dubhyam yadavocha vritham mune Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya proktam hi lokasya pramanam satyalokaki अथाजनि मया तुभ्यं यद् अवोचमृतं मुने. Please chant. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Proktam hi lokasya Pramanam satyaloka Athajani maya tukyam Yadavochamritam mune. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya proktam hi lokasya Pramanam satyalokaki Athajani maya tukyam Yadavochamritam mune. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya proktam hi lokasya Pramanam satyalokaki Athajani maya tukyam Yadavochamritam mune. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya proktam hi lokasya Pramanam satyalokaki Athajani maya tukyam Yadavochamritam mune. Anyone else? Okay, let's do word to word together. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Maya by me, Proktam spoken, he in fact, Lokasya for the people, Pramanam authority, Satya spoken in scripture, Lokaki and in ordinary speech, Atha therefore, Vijani there was birth, Maya by me, Tubhyam to you, Yet that which, Avocham I said, Itam true, Mune O sage. In translation together. The personality of Godhead Kapila said, whatever I speak, whether directly or in the scriptures, is authoritative in all respects for the people of the world. O Muni, because I told you before that I would become your son, I have descended to fulfill this wish. Okay, anybody want to volunteer to read maybe half the purport and then we can have another person read the other half?
Kardama Muni was to leave his family life to completely engage in the service of the Lord. But since he knew that the Lord himself, as Kapila, had taken birth in his home as his own son, why was he preparing to leave home to search out self-realization or God-realization? God himself was present in his home. Why should he leave home? Such a question may certainly arise. Here it is said that whatever is spoken in the Vedas and whatever is practiced in accordance with the injunctions of the Vedas is to be accepted as authoritative in society. Vedic authority says that a householder must leave home after his 50th year. Pancha Shordvam Vanam Rajet, one must leave his family life and enter the forest after the age of 50. This is an authoritative statement of the Vedas, based on the division of social life into four departments of activity: Brahmacharya, Grahashta, Vanaprashta, and Sannyas.
Can you read one more paragraph, please? Somebody, Bruce.
Kardama Muni practiced yoga very rigidly as a brahmachari before his marriage, and he became so powerful and attained so much mystic power that his father, Brahma, ordered him to marry and beget children as a householder. Kardama did that also. He begot 9 good daughters and 1 son, Kapila Muni, and thus his householder duty was also performed nicely. And now his duty was to lead. Even though he had the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his son, he had to respect the authority of the Vedas. This is a very important lesson. Even if one has God in his home as his son, one should still follow the Vedic injunctions. It is stated, Mahajano yena gata sa pantha. One should traverse the path which is followed by great personalities.
Kardama Muni's example is very instructive, for in spite of having the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the son, he left home just to obey the authority of the Vedic injunction. Kardama Muni states here the main purpose of his leaving home, while traveling all over the world as a mendicant, he would always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his heart, and thereby be freed from all the anxieties of material existence. In this age of Kali-Yuga, sannyasa is prohibited because persons in this age are all Shudras and cannot follow the rules and regulations of sannyas life. It is very commonly found that so-called sannyasis are addicted to nonsense, even to having private relationships with women. This is the abominable situation in this age. Although they dress themselves as sannyasis, they still cannot free themselves from the four principles of sinful life, namely illicit sex life, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. Since they are not freed from these four principles, they are cheating the public by posing as swamis. In Kali Yuga, the injunction is that no one should accept sannyas. Of course, those who actually follow the rules and regulations must take sannyas. Generally, however, people are unable to accept sannyas life, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stressed, Kalo nasteva 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 gatiranyanta. In this age, there is no other alternative, no other alternative than to chant the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama. The main purpose of sannyas life is to be in constant companionship with the Supreme Lord, either by thinking of Him within the heart or by mental agitation. But if one concentrates on hearing, he will be forced to associate with the sound vibration of Krishna. Krishna and the sound vibration Krishna are non-different, so if one loudly vibrates Hare Krishna, he will be able to think of Krishna immediately. This process of chanting is the best process of self-realization in this age. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya preached it so nicely for the benefit of all humanity.
Thank you. Okay, so here we talked about some of these topics that are discussed in the Prabhupada last Monday. The main question that Prabhupada raises is why did he leave home when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in his home? Like Draupadi asked that question. She said, if Krishna comes as my son, I would make every excuse I can to just stay home. So why is it that he's leaving home? Does anybody remember the answer that was discussed? Why is he leaving home even though Krishna is present as his son? Meet.
I remember Rasika said something about he has his own form of the Lord that he's experienced as a mendicant, and that his service trumps his desire to be with the Lord right then and there. Like maybe going out and preaching might be more important than associating with the Lord in that form.
That's true. Thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts? Nita?
Similar lines, like he wanted to respect, Prabhupada said in the purport, like he wanted to respect Vedic authority so that he sets an example like of what to do so that people in the later ages can follow in his footsteps. Like even if you also, this is a different thought that came to my mind. Maybe Kapila Dev, when he came, he necessarily didn't come to enjoy the parental rasa. Like Krishna, when he came, he did want to experience the rasa from his father, from his mother. But Kapil Dev is not like described as that. So yeah, so maybe that's why Kardamani also left home. so that he could perform his duties and let Kapil Dev fulfill the mission that he came for.
Thank you. Very nice answers. Okay. Also here it said, it was mentioned, he wants to respect the Vedic authority. Even if you have God as your son, that doesn't mean you can neglect the Vedas. So even we see that Krishna is described in the Krishna book. It's not that he's God himself. He didn't follow the Vedic injunctions. He would get up every day early in the morning and, he would meditate on himself. So he wasn't neglecting the Vedas. Even though one may be a great person, that doesn't excuse them from following certain rules and regulations. In fact, like for example, if somebody's a senior devotee, that doesn't mean they don't show up to Mangalarti or they don't follow certain rules and regulations that are set aside for them. But in fact, they come even more. They're always there. It's not like they're making excuses. Oh, I have this position, so I don't have to follow. Here, you wanted to set that standard that just because I have a son who is following, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that doesn't mean I can make that excuse because other people would follow in that step. That's another reason that's mentioned. So those are all very good reasons why Kardama Muni decided to leave home even though Kapila Dev is right there. Okay. Here it's also talking about how actually in this age of Kali, sannyas is prohibited. So in that age, Kalakanta Prabhu talked about this family situation was such that you could take sannyas and you could leave your wife with, the family and the kids so that she was taken care of. But in this age, sannyas is actually not recommended. And, I was thinking about this a little bit because we do see sannyasis in our movement. We see Prabhupada, who started this movement, he's a sannyasi. We see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is who gave us everything. He was a sannyasi. And as Kalakanta Prabhu mentioned, Prabhupada made a lot of sannyasis in the beginning so that this movement could go forward. Yet we hear that actually in this age, in Kali-Yuga, sannyas is prohibited. So does anybody know why is that prohibited? Are there certain reasons why we are not recommended sannyas in this age? Any thoughts on that? Rasika Prabhu?
So generally speaking, this would have been society was structured by varnashram. So it's not necessarily taking into consideration that the person taking sannyas has become a Vaishnava. So Vaishnava can do any of them, any of the varnas and ashrams. A Vaishnava is capable of fulfilling the duties of. But generally speaking, in society, someone who hasn't acquired a level of purity isn't. Sannyas is. How am I trying to say this? Sannyas becomes troublesome for someone who hasn't acquired purity of heart.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, in society, someone who's in a Brahmana family would go through the whole process, but if they haven't acquired any purity of heart, it would be very difficult for someone to fulfill the duties of sannyas.
Thank you. Yeah.
Rasika Prabhu said, and said in the purport, like those who follow the rules and regulations should, of course, take sannyas. Sannyas has very high standards, and people could take advantage of that position and not and cheat people. Like Prabhu was saying, so exploit other people because posing as renunciates. To avoid that, to prevent that from happening, it's usually recommended don't take sannyas, be simple and maintain your spiritual life. But Prabhupada did that for a higher purpose. We will talk about why Prabhupada makes so many sannyasis.
Yeah. Okay. Those are very good thoughts. Listening to a lecture about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and him taking sannyas and why he decided to take sannyas. And he was very young, so it was not very common to see sannyasis at that age. Even, he was in his 20s. And the reason he did take that step, even though bhakti and devotional service is beyond whether you take sannyas or you don't, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to take sannyas because he would be respected in society. People would listen to him. Even though he was God himself, if he hadn't taken sannyas, he wouldn't have that same level of respect that people will listen to him. So because that was beneficial to preaching and to reaching the hearts of people, he took that step. So devotee, in essence, sees, okay, what is best for my devotional service and to preach to others. If it is beneficial that I take this dress of a sannyasi so that people will hear me, hear what I have to say, then they take that step. Generally, we see that sannyasis are respected. They're known as monks, and people come and hear from them. If you're just a normal householder, there is some respect, even now, I think, for somebody who's been married for a long time, but there's a different sort of respect that is offered to somebody who is a monk. So similarly, like Srila Prabhupada, if he hadn't been a monk and come to the US, maybe less people would have heard him. So he took on this sannyas ashram and he came and preached so he could reach more people and he could fulfill the desire of his guru. So the purpose actually is pleasing Krishna and reaching the hearts of people. And the means to achieve that, whatever ashram can fulfill that purpose, one takes that on. That's how a devotee really sees the varnashram system. I don't know if I think probably everyone here is aware of varnashram, but it's a material categorization of people. It's not spiritual in the sense that it's based on your body. It's a bodily identification. So there's varnas and ashrams. Somebody is maybe a shudra or somebody is a brahmana, but that's based on the body one has. Somebody may be a sannyasi taking on that garb, but that's also based on the body. Bhakti or devotional service is beyond the bodily platform, which means it is beyond the varnashrama system. So it doesn't matter whether one is a householder or one is a sannyasi, whether one is a brahmachari. What is the purpose? The purpose is to serve Krishna. So in our life also we can think about that. In what situation, in what position in life would it be best for my service to Krishna? And sometimes, it's not always very clear actually what we need to be doing. I was thinking like even Arjuna was confused. He thought, oh, maybe I should just, pack up and leave the battlefield, and that would be the best thing to do. But in that confused state, he asked Krishna, like, what should I be doing in this situation? I surrender to you. And Krishna tells him, he doesn't tell him to go take sannyas. He tells him to sit and do his duty. So, and not to use it as an excuse to just be an irresponsible person. In our lives, I think it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to see, what situation might be most conducive to our devotional service. We may not know, okay, at this stage, okay, we know now that we're in the ashram, so that's best for our spiritual life. That's why we have come here. But we may not know, okay, it's time to move on maybe and have a family. That may be best for our spiritual life, or maybe best to continue being a monk. In these confused states, what we can do is approach a spiritual master like Arjuna did. And we can ask them, okay, please help me. I know the principle here is that I want to serve Krishna. I want to focus on my spiritual life. But the details, I don't know. Like, I don't know, should I be working? Should I be in the ashram? Should I be doing this? So then we can approach a spiritual master and figure out really what we need to do. And that spiritual master needs to understand what our nature is, and so that they can guide us to understand really what the principle is. In the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami says that there's actually only one principle. It's only accept everything that is favorable to Krishna and to reject everything that is unfavorable. So everything that is favorable, we don't know what the particular situation. It could be to renounce everything. It could be to keep doing our duty. On what is favorable, we accept that. And if it's unfavorable, we'll reject that. Actually, here it says another reason why sannyas is not recommended is people in Kali-Yuga. It's very difficult for them to be sannyasis because it said, compared to the other yugas, we are very lazy and it's hard to do austerities, it's hard to sit and read. So we have a very easy solution. We can just sit and chant Hare Krishna. I was thinking about this recently, actually. I know I'm not a very intellectual person, so it would be hard for me to just sit and read Bhagavatam for hours. Some devotees can do that. Or, manage a big project. There's so many skills devotees have. But what's the main process is very simple. Prabhupada says even a child can do it. So we just have to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. That's the purpose. Whatever situation is best for that, we can accept that. There's a when we have a situation in life, just think about, or we just chant the holy name. That is the purpose. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that all purposes that a well serves is served by a big reservoir of water. So the purpose of all these Vedic injunctions is to please and approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if we have the easy process of chanting Hare Krishna, we should accept that principle and move forward with that. Does anybody have any thoughts so far on this? Okay. I was thinking also that actually the intelligent thing to do is to chant Hare Krishna, even though it's simple and easy. Somebody could be like, why should I accept the simple process? Say we have to go to the 12th floor of a building. We could either be like, okay, I got this. I'm going to go up each flight of stairs, or we could decide to take the elevator. So chanting Hare Krishna in bhakti process is like taking the elevator. And so the same purpose is being fulfilled whether we take that step or this step. This way or that way. We can choose the smart process, which is actually chanting Hare Krishna. And it's not that because it's simple, it's lower. I remember there's this verse that said, I wanted to share with you. It says, "O my Lord, a person who is chanting your holy name, although born of a low family like that of a dog eater, is situated on the highest platform of self-realization. Such a person must have performed all kinds of penances and sacrifices according to Vedic rituals and study the Vedic literatures many, many times after taking his bath in all the holy places of pilgrimage. Such a person is considered to be the best of the Aryan family." So somebody who chants Hare Krishna, who's practicing bhakti, is actually much more higher than somebody who's maybe just renouncing things and is just accepting that position of giving up, material comforts. Bruce, you had a question or a comment?
Hare Krishna. I wanted to say, it's so simple that it's hard to accept. Like, it doesn't make any sense because it's so simple, but it does make sense, which doesn't make sense. It's just too simple, And yeah, that's all I had to say. It's like, yeah.
Arisham Prabhu and then John.
Hare Krishna. For most of us, we do take family life, and we hear a lot that one can be sannyasi in a family life. Could you speak on that?
That one can be a sannyasi in family life.
Well, remain in family. Yeah, what's the principle of sannyasa?
So here in the purport, Prabhupada says, talks about what the purpose of sannyas is. The purpose of sannyas life is to be in constant companion with the Supreme Lord, either by thinking of him within the heart or hearing of him through oral reception. So that is the purpose that can be fulfilled even in family life. We can think of Krishna and chant, hear about him through oral reception. We can hear the holy names. So it's often said that it's an internal state of mind. I think we were talking about that on Monday, that we have to renounce the idea of renouncing anything. We actually don't own anything. So even in family life, we can serve in that spirit that we don't own this home. We don't own, we can't boss around our kids. We're just using it to serve Krishna. We can also, at the same time, like Prabhupada said, engage in devotional service. So that fulfills the internal purpose of sannyas, where we're in that mood of using whatever we see to serve Krishna. It's not for my personal sense enjoyment. Would you like to add anything to that? Thank you. And Jonathan, you had your hand up. No? Rasika Prabhu.
So the sannyasi, though, can think about the Lord and read the scriptures and chant without having to get distracted by other duties.
Mhm.
And so at a certain point, it can be beneficial for one to, even if one doesn't necessarily take the solemn vows of sannyas at the end of life, to actually enter into that stage where one is exclusively focusing on one's next life, going back to Godhead. Not that a householder doesn't do that, or the other ashrams don't do that. It's just that the sannyas has gotten to a time in life where they exclusively focus on that, without having to fulfill any other duties.
Yeah, so it's a nice opportunity to deepen our Krishna consciousness at that time in life.
But it should come in the final stages of life. It's really what it's designed for. After one has had family life and then has gone through a period of retirement where one becomes trained in and purified from any remnants of the desire for money, sex, or power, basically, is what it comes down to put it crassly. So then at the end of life, once one has been trained to try to be free from those things, then he can exclusively, without any danger of falling into sinful behavior, exclusively focus on hearing and chanting, thinking of the Lord, and speaking to those that come for some type of guidance.
Yeah, that's a very nice point, that it naturally should come later in life. I know we were talking about how Prabhupada made sannyasis in their young 20s. That wasn't very common. In Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he took sannyas, that was not very common. And now, I believe in ISKCON, like somebody in their 20s cannot take sannyas. You need to be older in age, because that's just naturally how the progression goes. It's very risky in like early ages to take that step and not like really internally be there. So with time, we can be sure that this is what I want to do. Some history, I was thinking that back when Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was there, that actually the devotees were not respected, and that bhakti was not being respected, and Vaishnavas were not respected, because they just thought, oh, they just chant Hare Krishna, and it's like so easy, what are they doing? And they thought, okay, sannyasis they're real spiritualists, we gotta respect them. And so that was kind of the mindset back then, and maybe it's still prevalent in some parts of India. So I think to discredit that, there is also sannyasis in our bhakti tradition who we can listen to and other people will listen to, because that natural respect will be there. We don't just think, oh, it's like something simple that even a child can do. Even though it's something very simple, they're very elevated, because devotional service is even higher than a sannyasi. I've heard that even, like somebody who's a grihastha is practicing devotional service is much higher than just like a Mayavad sannyasi. And in this, the verse that I read was saying that somebody who chants Hare Krishna is one of the the highest positions we can achieve. So those are some thoughts I had. Any other last minute questions or comments? Nita?
The last point you mentioned about his answers to the Prabhupada, like then he also started giving second initiation. Like a few days ago we saw a second initiation ceremony happening, that a devotee starts acting like a brahmana or receives sacred thread. He can chant the sacred Gayatri mantra. Even that was not the case during like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, who is the spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada, he started like initiating people in as brahmanas, so that people would not think that Vaishnavism is just a material caste. Like Vaishnavas can also be like act as brahmanas, follow the same standards. Like internally we are highest, but externally we can also follow the same standards that other brahmanas do. So instead of like we're talking about Varnashram system, people started identifying Varnashram system as based on birth instead of like one's nature. And so to change that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada started like initiating people as brahmanas, that if you have the nature, if you start acquiring the qualities of a brahmana, you can become a brahmana irrespective of what your birth is. It's like he was revolutionary, so he started that practice.
Thank you. Okay. I think so. Just to sum up everything now, there's no more points. Just wanted to say that here, Kardama Muni is living family life and is going to focus on his spiritual life, and he does attain the ultimate position, goes back to Godhead. But that's not something necessarily that we all have to do, and it's actually, I guess, it's not recommended, but it is something that we can take if that's something that will help our spiritual life. So in essence, we should evaluate our life and see what will benefit me in my spiritual life right now. What is going to help me chant better? What is going to help me serve the devotees? What is going to help me serve Krishna better? Whatever decisions we make in life, we can base it on that. And if we can keep that as a central focus, all these little details, they will fall into place. The details of, okay, where am I staying? What job am I doing? Where am I traveling? These things, they're just minor details, and they'll fall into place if we just keep in focus that our purpose is to serve Krishna better and to chant better. And whatever the situation is, we're going to try to arrange it so that we can achieve that purpose. For Kardama Muni, the best thing he could do was to take sannyas, so he did that. But for each of us, we can reflect on each decision in our life and do what is best. And if we're confused, like I was saying, we can approach a spiritual master and seek their guidance. So, thank you all so much for listening. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Radhe Govinde